Hey everybody, this is Zigsta. I want to welcome you all to the first Brawl Back Room Interview. We are here with none other than the man, the myth, the legend, and dare I say it, the wonder himself, Reflex. Reflex, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks. I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Glad to finally do this. Everybody's so sorry for all the delays. Without any further ado, let's dive into it. So
Better late than
Reflex, in the
never.
Smash history, you were one of the top melee Bowsers. So what made you move on to Brawl and then actually prefer Brawl to Melee?
Well, the thing about it was, realistically, my tech skill is not very good, to put it lightly. And I feel like my specialty in Melee, as it were, ended up being prediction. I I was kind of bad at fighting characters that would move very quickly, which pretty much ended up being the good characters in Melee. And as a result, I struggled, and it shows in Brawl. Fox and Toon Link are sort of my kryptonite because they just move everywhere really quickly. And so as a result, moving down to this made it so it was more of a focus on. I guess I had time to think instead of just having to do something at every single moment, and it felt better. I felt more at home in that because I feel like I can outthink anybody or pretty much anybody as long as they don't rush me. Uh, Spoilers, that means aggro against you should go aggro against me if you ever play me in tournament. But I just liked the idea of individual hits rather than I'm on you the entire time. It just worked out a lot better for me. I got to use my mind more than my fingers, and it helps significantly for my, I guess, success.
Cool. So then how do you warm up before your bracket matches?
Uh, Generally speaking, I just try and find relatively good players. Um, I don't do anything special. I just go into matches, make sure that I'm not. I guess my muscle memory is ready. I know what to expect from my character and the general idea. Like a lot of times, Kismet plays a lot of different characters for fun. So a lot of times I'll get him to play the character, any character that I might be worried about later in the tournament, so I can get a feel for it. Um, but in general, I don't worry about it too much. In fact, I spend a lot of time on my 3DS in between matches, so it's not a lot of like practice getting going on. I've got it pretty much figured out for the most part.
So you have a reputation, Reflex, of being this fun-loving guy who likes to act out his character's moves while he plays. Explain to me what exactly is your mindset while playing Brawl?
Generally speaking, well, the whole thing is it's a video game. The idea is it's competitive gaming, but at the same time, it's a video game. If you're not having fun, then I don't understand what you'd be doing there. And uh, there are things in Brawl that can get kind of annoying depending on the situation. Uh, Certain characters are really good at that, but I guess not taking it super seriously allows me to feel a lot better about it. And since I'm not getting stressed at the person grabbing the ledge 10 times before hitting on the stage, um, I can get back and think a little better than I would normally. So it really just comes down to not getting frustrated. And I guess I'm a little quirky in the sense that I don't mind being silly in the way that, I don't know, like in Melee, Bowser F Smash, anybody see that? I'll yell, I'll
So
shake.
good.
It really is the Bowser train. But and so it's really just a keeping it into and not taking it too seriously and keeping the situation in perspective, not trying to be too upset at anything that happens and having a good time because that's really what the tournament's all about.
Well, it seems like that mentality is a great way to be able to learn a bunch of different characters at the same time. And you're known for using a bunch of different characters for fun and tournament. I've seen you use, of course, Wario, Pokemon Trainer. I've seen Wolf, Link. People have seen Captain Falcon. Some people think you're the best Captain Falcon now. Are there any characters you've tried to learn, but you just can't use them well enough to pull them off in the tournament?
Uh, I've had a brief stint with most characters, and for the most part, they tend to work out pretty well. I mean, decently well. I don't claim to be a top five everything, but if I had to pick anything, my greatest regret is probably Sheik. I really like Sheik, and Sheik is a very underrated character. I think she's totally tournament viable and everything, but she moves a little quickly for my taste, and again, my tech skill is awful. So yeah, I can get the grab, but I can't do the Dacus to save my life. So little things like that, like because I would love to be able to do that and kill characters at 90, but I can't. And so I struggle trying to kill them with neutral airs and things, and it just not work out nearly as well as I would like it to. So that's probably my biggest issue has been with that. And then in Melee, it was Ice Climbers. Ice Climbers ended up being the one character I couldn't play. It's not so bad in Brawl, although I don't really chain grab much. But who cares when you can just hobble? So I just do that and fight, which is another thing that Ice Climbers players should get better at, just legitimately fighting. But I guess people say that all the time. But that's the main one, Sheik, I think.
I've seen you a lot on the Wario and PT boards utilizing the character threads to theorycraft, if you will, for lack of a better word, or talk about potential strategies with the characters, much more so than a lot of other top players for their respective characters. How important do you think it is to utilize the community to further the metagame of the characters within the game?
Oh, I think it's very important. The fact that a lot, especially for the good characters, given that there's such a player base for that. Like with Pokemon Trainer, we have a few good ones. We have T Block and Coontail that post a lot, who are solid players in their own right, and it works out fine. But the whole thing is, I'm just one person. Everybody is just one person, and I can count many different, like with the Wario boards. A lot of people consider me the most knowledgeable Wario, but for example, with Lord Chair, every single time I see him post, I think, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And you don't see it often enough. I feel like in some character boards, a lot of times, maybe it's because the game is getting older and people aren't, I guess, putting their minds to it a whole lot anymore. But you see a lot of times people will post and it'll just be like end up being more like another social thread, or somebody will post a video and everybody will pat each other on the back, but no, I guess, discussion really goes on. And so I'm really glad to have other people motivated and trying to look at things from a different angle. I know I've been posting a lot more on the Pokemon Trainer boards. New ATs are like compiling different data for like punishing multiple things with the same option. Uh, and I feel like if more people got involved, I think this game still has a lot of room to grow, and I'd really like to see that a lot more.
One of the things I always find, speaking of dealing with the Smash community and improving the characters metagame with others, a lot of times people ask, how do you get a read within the game of Brawl? Can you give the listeners out there any advice on how you in particular get the reads necessary to win? And then what's your favorite kind of prediction to make?
Well, most characters have uh, most characters have their own small baits or especially safe tactics that allow you to feel them out. For example, um, a really good thing with Wario is you can hover around, or I guess just outside people's space with neutral air, because it hits twice and has a lingering hitbox. Um, and as a result, if you pressure them well enough, you can see if they are willing to just throw it out there and try and punish you, or if they like to stick in their shield a lot. Um, a lot of movement, and I feel like a lot of movement in Brawl ends up being the sweet spot of mid range, where you're just outside of their range, where neither of you can really touch each other, but you can get a feel for how they react if you weave in and out. And so the biggest thing is, outside of, I guess, experimenting to know all the different options you can do from, I guess, that range, and when you get in, what you can do there to pressure them, is just to try and pay attention to what they're doing. And of course, the general knowing the character, like what the other character is capable of, is important as always. But as far as individual players go, little moves here and there to feel them out is really key. As far as my favorite read to make, usually it involves a lot of very weak strings. Like, for example, if using, like with Wario, I might hit somebody with a late neutral air, which gives you pretty good frame advantage in most situations. Like weak neutral air, you get jab 1, cancel that into grab, or even outside of that, try and, like, once you get the weak neutral air to jab, you might see a spot dodge depending on the character, or you can go for the grab and try and punish them with an up air or a waft. But every single time you see one of those small attacks land, like, you can feel their fear, and it's wonderful. When you see that spot dodge and you knew it was going to be there a second before it happened, you land that waft, you kill them at 70, and they throw their controller in frustration. It's a pretty nice feeling. And there's different things, like with Pokemon Trainer, move around with Charizard, you dodge and counter, like with Charizard's F Smash. It's the same thing with Melee Bowser F Smash. You can do a turnaround and a dash and do it, because he leans back. You hit them, they die at 80. Just little things that make them nervous, that gets you into your ridiculously powerful attack. Hitting somebody with Razor Leaf, and then they air dodge into up smash as Ivysaur, and they feel awful. That's probably the main
absolutely embarrassing.
It tends to be. In fact, dying to most Ivysaur things tends to seem especially, like, embarrassing for most people. Because then, like, you Nair Spike with Ivysaur, and then you just hang there with your up B, and they're like, I almost made it, but I didn't. So really, it's just killing them at especially low percents after tapping them with little things. Because you get to feel their fear build up. It's wonderful.
Sounds kind of like the Joker, man. So speaking of Pokemon Trainer, I know in the past you used to say you co-main Wario in Pokemon Trainer, but it seems that now you're definitely more of a Wario main. Are there still any matchups you prefer to use Pokemon Trainer over Wario?
Well, if you would have, well, I guess when you did ask me this, when the initial interview is supposed to happen, that was how I felt. I feel like I'm starting to inch more towards co-maining. Obviously, given the fact that Wario does better against the high tiers, I end up using Wario more than Pokemon Trainer, but I would definitely still say a solid co-main. But as far as the characters that I prefer to use Pokemon Trainer on, there aren't a lot of matchups that Pokemon Trainer does better than Wario. But the few that I can think of, against a really smart Donkey Kong, I think I prefer Pokemon Trainer. Charizard does all right. A lot of them don't really know how to deal with Squirtle once he gets in, and Ivysaur is a soft counter, which works out pretty well. And if you ask anybody in the world, they'll say that's garbage and that Ivysaur against the entire cast is 70-30, but
right.
I mean, everyone's welcome to money match me to prove their point, I guess. But
is that official? Is that an official throwdown? Will versus
yes,
Reflex?
You're welcome
Ivysaur
to.
only?
As long as your character is mid-tier or below, I'm okay with that. And even if not, I'd be okay with it, but I might not expect to win necessarily, depending on the matchup. But if you catch me at a tournament, I'll probably be more than happy to play you in some friendlies, some seriouslys, or a money match. Although I'm a poor college student, so it probably won't be for a lot. Outside of that, I like fighting Zerasuit with it, because Zerasuit and Pikachu, to a degree, because I feel like Wario doesn't quite move around well enough, or at least quickly enough to deal with that. And like I said, that's my issue. So being able to poke better with, I guess, more dangerous moves makes me feel better. So I like those two matchups. And if any, oftentimes I'll try and test the water with PT in a sense that nobody plays this character, and so it can work out really well. People running into things that they quote unquote shouldn't and dying at really low percents. Sometimes it's all. Oh, there's another one. Ice Climbers. I feel just as comfortable with Pokemon Trainer as I do with Wario. I think all three of them do pretty well. Charizard especially, and I think it works out great. But hopefully, I can show that in the future if I ever get to play more Ice Climbers.
So rolling along even further with Pokemon Trainer, you've had a lot of big time tournament wins with this character. At one time, people thought was a low tier character. What's your favorite tournament set win using Pokemon Trainer?
Well, I have an awful memory. The main thing that if I had to cite anything now, probably at Herb 3, I guess that's like 2.5 years ago or something. This infamous logic set where I'm about on the verge of getting 3-socked, and then Squirtle decides he's gonna turn on the juice and straight up molests him. A lot of people remember that pretty vividly. I know I do. I bet Logic does too. But
He
that
wanted you to
just
pause,
really
man.
stands out. It really stands out to me because it usually doesn't get to me like when I'm losing, but with Pokemon Trainer, with fatigue and all these other things piling up, and the fact that Olimar does crazy damage all the time, it felt rough. And going in and taking getting the first stock off, getting him in the air, just string after string after string, felt so good. Made me feel like, I guess, sort of validated my point of this character's not as bad as everybody thinks they are. And I really like that, and I really hope to show off more in a competitive setting with the characters, so that more people don't think, well, Reflex is just good and this character is G tier. I really do think that they have a lot of potential, and hopefully I can show that off.
How high do you think Pokemon Trainer can rise on the tier list?
Realistically, not much higher. I don't think they're a particularly good character. If I had to say anything, if more people started taking advantage of the things that we found on the PT board, which you're welcome to check and pick up PT because he's awesome, maybe just a few steps higher than where he is. I could see him being better than Yoshi, Ness, Ike, Luigi. I mean, I guess he's already higher than Luigi now, I think, but he's got some pretty good potential, and I think that he stands a chance. I do think that I agree with the general idea that as he is, he's pretty much the cutoff or near cutoff of viability, partly because he's such a difficult character to get used to playing as, but maybe a few steps up higher than his tier. I think he's like E tier or something. I don't know, but he's like the bottom of mid, and he could be a few steps higher. Nothing special, but he's pretty good.
So there's this weird phenomenon with Pokemon Trainer where people see you winning tournaments with Pokemon Trainer and beating damn good characters, and then they try to pick up Pokemon Trainer and fail. What advice do you give to someone who's trying to pick up Pokemon Trainer, wants to become the next Reflex, wants to win a tournament with them?
Pick up a secondary for Marth and Day to Day. But in all seriousness, if I had to say anything, it usually ends up being, know every single one of your options. Pokemon Trainer doesn't have a ton of them, but each of the three Pokemon really excel at certain parts of their game. For example, Squirtle has a really nice ground game. His jab, ridiculous grab range, up throw into juggles because his up air is beyond ridiculous. Um, Ivysaur has a lot of 50-50s that it's essentially if you guess correctly, the opponent is really hurting. Um, and Ivysaur also has rather good edge guarding that a lot of people don't take into account or don't really take seriously. I know every time I play friendlies, like at a tournament with people I've never been to, it's like Reflex, let's play, and then I go to Ivysaur, and then they get Nair spiked 3 times in the first game, and it's just like it happens. You just have to. It's more likely than you think. And Charizard's really linear. I guess this wasn't supposed to turn into what the character's supposed to do, but it really just ends up being know all of your options. All three of the Pokemon do very specific things. And a lot of people just try and focus on one Pokemon. Like people say, I would secondary Squirtle if I could, or I'd secondary Charizard if I could. But you really can't play any of them like you can't play one like any of the other two. They're very distinct characters that you have to get used to playing very differently. And if you neglect one, then you're almost playing with two stocks, and that's not a good feeling. It's a very complicated character. Read up. I've posted a lot of different things on the boards. I have a sort of outdated guide and a bunch of different threads that I post in. It's just a lot of information that needs to be taken in for PT. But he's not a particularly difficult character to apply once you have the knowledge. But there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be, I guess, understood. So the main thing, I guess, read up and experiment a lot. That's what I ended up doing. That's with so few PT lanes for the longest time. I had to figure out a lot by myself, so it was pretty difficult. But now you've got a lot of the information available to you. So if you do that, hopefully you'll be showing me some stuff, and we'll get Pokemon to A tier. Pokemon Trainer to A tier, right?
Right. So moving along to a character that's slightly higher in the tier list, Wario. At what point did you decide to start using Wario?
When I found out he was in the game. The reason being, WarioWare is probably my favorite game series of all time. And that sounds really silly because it's not deep or super engaging at all. I have a really short attention span, so when I first played the game, I fell in love with it, and I became a high score fiend for it, I guess, the original. And I have all the WarioWare games, and I love all his mannerisms and his character. And so when I found out he was in Brawl, I was like, I must try and play him. And initially, actually, I thought the character was awful, but I was like, I've got to try and make it work at least. Thankfully, he ended up being much better than awful. And so from the start, I was always ready to play Wario. Love everything about him, and it worked out really well.
So Omatic wants to know. Shoutouts to Omatic. You will never play Wario. You are straight up Peach main. But for some reason, he wants to know, do you have any tips to become a better Wario?
Generally speaking, I feel like what separates the good Warios from the great Warios tends to be knowing when to press your advantage. If you have a lot of different safe moves, I mean, air dodge away, yeah, that's a good thing, but you're not really accomplishing anything. Landing late neutral air, I guess knowing, like, if they're at 30%, knowing whether you can land a jab or an F smash or just a grab. I guess the whole thing is a lot of his strings just barely work, but he does a lot of damage when they do work. So getting a feel for the character and allowing you to know when, I guess, the right string or the right move to choose to continue your pressure, really does turn your game to take your game to a whole new level with Wario. That's how you land the wafts that win you games. It should be less about air dodging in and more about legitimately pressuring them with moves. Too many Warios, I feel, jump around with too little purpose. They're just like, let me air dodge in and hope for the best. And because air dodging is retarded in this game, yeah, it'll work every now and again. But if you want to be truly consistent, I guess you have to feel it out better than that. You have to stick moves out and make them land. Sounds a little basic, I know, but I mean, I really do feel like it's an underdeveloped thing with Wario, and that's what most people should focus on in that matchup or with that character.
Wario is another weird kind of character that he's obviously a very good character. He's high up on the tier list, but for some reason, there's not that many American Warios who are doing very well in tournaments, especially compared to its Wario's high tier, top tier counterparts. Why do you think Wario really has yet to truly stand out as this great character like a Snake or a Diddy or even a Marth or Pikachu?
If you asked me for the last 3-ish years, probably because Meta Knight existed. Like I don't mean that in a harder Meta Knight's retarded, but I really do feel like how little range and what little range Wario has, and the fact that I guess it's just so difficult to get in to do much of anything makes those characters really struggle. And then there's the idea of what is arguably our hardest matchup, for like most Warriors would say so anyway. King Day-to-Day is a very King Day-to-Day in that matchup just sort of picks options, and when he lands them, they do a lot more to us than our options do to him. So he just needs to pick various options and not be predictable and win. So the fact that Meta Knight is so widespread, as well as the fact that our hardest counter doesn't have to think very hard in that matchup, makes it really difficult to struggle. Plus, the fact that you have to switch from offense and defense really, I guess, on the fly. You have to poke and run away and get your strings perfectly in order to get them to work. I guess it takes a lot of knowledge that I don't want to say people aren't capable of, but can be discouraging to get to for most players. So I think that's what's been holding him back for the most part. I do think he is a very good character, and that he still has more potential than what's shown. But that's probably the main thing. It's that those two matchups have been really rough, and realistically, most of his matchups are okay, but not great. He doesn't cover a lot of the high tiers especially well. So usually if you're like doing a co-main deal, you have better characters to turn to. I don't know. Plus he is notorious for being, I guess, a very air campy, and apparently I feel like more people would prefer to stay grounded. You have more options there, which might factor into it. I don't know. But I've always felt better in the air, which is why Squirtle and Wario are my thing. But who knows? Maybe somebody else would have a better answer than I would. That's just the feeling that I've gotten over the course of my playing Wario.
So for the listeners out there who've been living under a rock for the past 3-4 years, Reflex is from the Alabama, Georgia area, goes to a lot of tournaments there. Reflex, as a top-level player in your state, how do you help your state improve?
Well, I am currently the president of a group we have called the Alabama Smash League, which runs a circuit in the Alabama area. We work with groups in the adjacent states. We have a lot of Georgia and Tennessee help. As far as that goes, we've tried to make it convenient and inexpensive for players to try and go. we recently had a setup. Like we're currently in the season 2 of it, where the setup is go to 6 tournaments for $30. We've managed to make it to break even so far, which is really all we needed. But we've seen attendance improve as a result, and outside of that, just as a player, I'm the kind of person that if you just say hello and just ask me a question about something, whether it's the game or not, I'm more than happy to help out. I've had situations like I've been to regionals and nationals where people say, "Oh, I'm a big fan." Just sort of like ask for little tips, and then I'll say, "Hey, if you play a couple matches with me or play a couple matches with somebody, I'll watch and I'll tell you what you're doing wrong or what I think you could improve on." Um, and I'm always posting on the boards. I'm more than I. A lot of Alabama players will tell you I'm very accessible. I try and keep myself open to a lot of people so that they can ask whatever they need. So realistically, it ends up being how much a person wants to know from me, and I'm more than happy to oblige. I feel like I've helped a lot of people, and I hope to continue doing that because I really enjoy. I guess it's a really nice feeling knowing that you have a lot of knowledge in the game, and somebody asking you that. Not only is that saying that they I guess understand that I have a lot of knowledge, but it's flattering to know that they would want to that they believe they can improve by talking to me, and it's a really good feeling to do that. So I try and do it as much as possible, really.
That's awesome, man. I find it so rare for top players to become truly accessible to players who aren't as experienced, aren't as talented, aren't as good, whatever you want to call them. Alabama and Georgia players have becoming more and more well known over the years at big tournaments like Apex, at the NLG events. Guys like Player One, DRN, yourself, Kismet, Big Lou, all starting to make names for themselves. How do you think the Alabama Georgia area stacks up to the rest of the country player wise?
Well, to be honest, for the most part, a lot of the situation ends up being, or for the longest time, has been Georgia and Reflex. But as far as Alabama goes, I feel like a lot of us are coming out of the woodwork, and we're trying to work with them to try and get them more, I guess, to improve and to come out of state to show off a little more. We have some lesser known players that I feel like will be making a name for themselves in due time. I really hope, like Spade and Cam, Ragnarok, Billy. Billy's sort of Georgia, sort of Alabama, but this is the point. Will hopefully go to your state, or your, as in the people listening, and make a name for themselves. As far as stacking up to the rest of the universe, I think we hold our own. I guess that that is really shown at Apex, where a vast majority of us made it to bracket and did pretty well for ourselves. Um, I think we're. I mean, we're. I'm realistic in that I don't think we're the best, but I would say, as far as our good players go, pretty decently above average. I would say that pretty much anybody would have to worry about playing our best players, and I like to think that shows when we go out of state. Um, and I think that will only continue to improve. So hopefully, I won't eat my words.
I just realized I totally forgot Four God. So shout outs to Four God, even though you main DDD, and I hate DDD.
I'm right there with you. He's gotten so much better in recent times. He he's actually in Florida right now, I think, for the summer, but he he ends up doing so well when he's around, and it's really something else. I don't know what they had like doing day-to-day dittos at Apex, but he's really gone from good to great in a matter of a couple months, and I think he's really gunning for top day-to-day. I can't say enough, and he's the nicest guy in the world too. If you talk to him,
That's awesome.
he's I don't know. It's just another player there. I feel like a lot of people don't. He doesn't get to go out often enough to appreciate. And then MCP Pants too. Uh, he is a very underrated wolf that I feel scares me every time I have to play him in tournament. And hopefully, ideally, he'll be able to go out of state more and show off too. But I think that collectively we do pretty darn well as a group as far as compared to everybody else.
So everybody's looking forward to Smash 4 and Wii U, and of course, lo and behold, it wasn't talked about at all at E3 this year, sadly. Are you thinking, Reflex, you're going to continue playing competitively on Smash 4? I mean, if it comes out anytime this decade.
I mean, I love video games. I've played every Smash game to date competitively. I'd be willing to give it a shot as long as I don't feel like a crotchety old man by then. If I like it, and I'll play it. Ideally, maybe if we have a competitive scene, I like to think I'd play it. But that remains to be seen. There's a lot more to go. I'm pretty good at Brawl, so as long as that keeps going, I think I'll keep playing it. And so I think I'll stick around. I don't think you'll have to worry about me going away during that time, or anytime soon at least.
So one more big picture question before we call it a night. Reflex, what would you change about Brawl or the Brawl community at large?
I think that's really a two-part answer. As far as the game itself, I mean, there are obviously a lot of issues with it that some people aren't too happy about. If I had to pick one, no. If I had to pick multiple things, if I were to make my own version of balanced Brawl, all rights reserved. I don't know if it's a thing, but whatever. I would just take out spot dodging. If spot dodging weren't in the game, I feel like the game would be significantly more balanced and significantly more awesome. For reasons that I'll probably post in various places and have posted in various places all over the boards. I'm willing to talk with anybody who might want me to elaborate on that, but I'll leave that for another time. As far as the community goes, I feel like, as you mentioned earlier, I feel like a lot of top players sort of brush off the players who aren't considered as skilled or as talented or whatever. And I feel like they sort of make this like elite status club among top players that can get discouraging for a lot of people. That takes away from this community aspect of it. And I think that's a really bad thing for the community. In a way that somewhat similar to Melee Brawl hate in its heyday. I've always been a really big proponent of just trying to get the community together and I guess have a sense of, well, community. And I feel like people pushing each other away in that sense is only a bad thing. I realize this is kind of basic, but it's, if we just had more people reach out or share their knowledge a little more, then I feel like the game wouldn't, in some situations, like character boards and things like that, wouldn't feel so dead. It wouldn't seem like, oh, well, this guy is the face of this character, and we don't really hear much more about any other Wario's or any other, I don't know, other characters, you know. And so I feel like there's not enough of a focus on the community at large, improving the mid-level players and making the game accessible. I feel like it's gotten a little better in recent times. I feel like it was pretty bad during MLG days. People started getting really obnoxious and immature, but it's getting better, and you can make it better. That was supposed to sound like a public service announcement, but
vote for Reflex.
Reflex for great politician, 2012, all day. But that's pretty much it. Be a little nicer to the people who aren't as good as you, or whatever you want to call it, because they in turn will improve and make you better. and that's really what it's all about. Well, and having fun, but as far as the competitive aspect goes, you want to get better. Don't get complacent. Try and continue improving with everybody else. And a lot of fun will be had for all.
Amen to that. Any other last shout outs or advice you want to give to the folks back home, Reflex?
Nothing in particular. Everybody who I would give a shout out to knows I love them. So, that about wraps it up. Feel free to talk to me if you want to. I mean, everybody else that doesn't really do so. Again, I'm accessible, and I'm more than happy to help out anybody who is looking out to improve themselves or just wants to talk about whatever. I guess that's about it, to be honest. I don't have a lot else that I haven't already said.
Awesome. Well, Reflex, thank you so much for being a part of the interview tonight. Guys and gals out there, if you'd like to meet Reflex in person, he will be at WOBO August 3rd through 4th in Houston, Texas.
Woo!
Tickets
That's right.
are on sale online until July 31st. So if you want to register, go online ASAP and get your tickets. I also like to give a big shout out to Twinkie for recording. Twinkie, thank you very much.
Thank you, buddy.
And thank you, the Smashers back home, for your patience, your understanding, and for playing the game most of us know and love. And before we wrap, guys and gals, just wanted to announce that our next Brawl Back Room Interviews selection round will be mid-tier themed. You can vote on Kane, the Wolf player, Espy, the Sonic player, Nicole, the Peach main, Ed, the Sheik/Zelda main, or Boar, the Ike main. Till next time, happy smashing.
That's right. Take care.